It's May 7th, 2022, 2 days before acting warlord Vladimir Putin holds his anniversary of the um, celebration of the victory of war over Germany by Russian army. And I recommend the Russian film The Fall of Berlin um, for this occasion. My goal in this video isn't to address um, the legitimacy of Russia's grievance with the Ukraine in the least, um, for or against. But I think the time period should be noted because it's a development that affects my own investigation. So, what I'm doing with this video is putting in the context of this time what is my established long-standing investigation, of which my injuries are evidence, considerable injuries. Essentially, what I discovered was that AIDS was an attack, and that the same persons responsible authored COVID 19 rather than cast it as an act of the United States of America per se. I'm citing negligence by the United States of America because people here in Tacoma, for example, were clearly involved as they were in Pittsburgh. Now, how do I know that and where does it lead? I was a medical library clerk stationed at Falk Medical Library in 1984, around the time my father showed up and died. The earliest information about AIDS was coming in. I heard in the lunchroom and read in the paper the comments of the Reagan administration towards victims that I know suffered harrowing deaths. This before medicine knew what to do at all. And I was appalled by what was being called the stigma at the time. I thought these people should be warned and should social distance until we come to grips with this. Meanwhile, I was getting spammed by letters from a very hostile agency posing as friendly. And it's important to understand this character of this agency, to be very, very hostile while posing as friendly. It's very important to understand that is their essential character. Saying the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And at that point, rational analysis of the entire situation falls apart. Because in order for rational analysis of the entire situation to be sane, you would have to enter into record the comment, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, regarding the subject that was being addressed, which was AIDS, meaning the contraption of warfare that's lying through the media about what is happening is greater in value to the money bags behind the operation than the sum of all of the victims who are going to die because of their failure to tell anybody honestly and directly about what's happened. Meanwhile, I was in the dark but very suspicious. I reasoned, and it turned out quite correctly, that in order to get any kind of warning out to my peers, I was going to have to find out what was going on. And I also reasoned quite correctly that the next thing they were going to do was take a look at people like me who were sleeping around and try to force me into an AIDS testing war game, which is exactly what they did. And the person who called me to Mount Desert Island where it took place was talking about the operation that he engaged in for the FMEMA before AIDS ever even happened. Yet his alliance, it was clear, was with this British intelligence service whose character was to pretend that they were friendly while hostily setting up lethal actions of hate crime towards the person they were knowingly luring and knowingly deceiving. Now that's basic and proven. And I found more evidence while I was up there and secured more evidence while I was up there, and it can't be denied. And when I found out back in Pittsburgh what else they were hiding, it turned out they were hiding it as a partnership with the authors of this secret war investigation, who went so far as to poison me in the mouth before releasing COVID. So we know fairly clearly what they have done and who they are. The agency responsible was the Revenge Operation group from um, the Axis powers operating out of Carnegie Mellon University. One of them, Martha Hardy Shawns, specialized in revenge. She called her group Alternative Conflict Resolution, but she loved revenge stories. And this was all set up as a warped game of pin the tail on the donkey. In other words, make the victims pay for their own victimization. Terrible, horrific crime of hate. Okay. So this is the truth of the situation. You can learn about it in my blog. You can look at my videos. In an attempt to sabotage the obvious truth of what the situation proves, which is that I was tortured, rendered semi-comatose, and led through a war game operation, a sort of mousetrap system, so that they could pin the tail on the donkey and blame the victim and say, you must drink the Kool-Aid. They created a Stratego board of us versus them with their partners in the operation, which involves Putin. I want to say something clear about Putin's character. He's charismatic. He has aptitude, knowledge, awareness. He's cosmopolitan. He's up to date. He has all the things you would want in a good leader. I've seen him very sympathetically engaging with a blonde woman. I've seen him talk knowledgeably and honestly and persuasively about the travesty of America's blitzkrieg over Iraq. I've learned through investigations that were uh, pursued when my curiosity was aroused about what happened in Syria and the truthful explanations of what happened in Syria from this cosmopolitan, well spoken person's persuasiveness. So the lure to say Russia is less discredited than the United States of America, so that the persons in power behind the scenes, who are a partnership of all of the major oligarchs playing leapfrog across nation state lines, the Ouspensky Circle, who were behind the AIDS attack and the COVID bomb, which included leaders in China, included leaders in Russia. I mean, there's no reason for a nuclear war. There's reasons for uh, replacing their leadership if you oppose what they did. And of course, the legacy of the intellectual heritage of the Cold War is being used as a smokescreen for this Ouspensky circle operating behind the scenes. And they're trying to force a Cold War either or situation so that either you say that you side with Russia or the University of Pittsburgh will make it out that you accept the crimes that have been discussed by Putin. And there's no alternative. Either you side with Russia about the claim that America was behind these biolabs, or you will be faulted for collaborating. And I don't see it that way. What I see is negligence on the part of the authorities who are responsible for properly investigating. And they're using a Cold War apparatus to help Putin cover for Biden. When both Putin and Biden know there's no reason for a nuclear exchange about the biolabs because all of the relevant parties had a secret agreement through the Ouspensky Circle to do it this way. And the battle royal is just a way of showing how vicious both sides can be when they see fit to be very, very vicious. Now, the climate change movement was postponed to allow all of this to be done by the British intelligence services and the pornographic genocide lobby who were behind the script that Trumpington implanted on me when knocking me unconscious as a child so that he could say I owed the other victims of Jim Jones the right to force me to drink the Kool-Aid because they like John Lennon better than Jimmy Kennedy and so on. I mean, it's a simple system of what they did. And if you look at it from the point of view that John Lennon really died, you're basically saying since John Lennon is dead, everybody else has to die too, going along with that line of attack. But the real issue is the evidence that it was put on as a lampoon of Shakespeare, where John Lennon's death was simply a role that was scripted. Now, once you realize that John Lennon's death was an essential role that was scripted, you have the right to question whether he wasn't really secretly beamed up and his death broadcast by this insane lying media that we now have. A double fantasy, in other words, because something they had been planning from back in World War II when Reagan and Errol Flynn met with Hitler. When Errol Flynn met with Hitler and Reagan, I should say, they worked it out to kill Kennedy and plant this script. All would have gone nowhere if John Lennon hadn't been at the appointed place at the appointed time. Now, somebody who's savvy to that fact might say, so Yoko Ono and Paul McCartney were behind it. I don't believe that's the truth. It's the reason why I don't investigate that possibility. I know that Onassis was party to what happened at JFK, and that has shut down a lot of the Kennedy establishment in being honest with what happened at Dealey Plaza. So the logic could be spun that Yoko Ono made sure that he was there. But I don't believe that's what the evidence says. The evidence suggests that Lennon himself was party to it. Now, what McCartney and Dan Rather at CBS and George Takei and others have mongered, and the way that they, for example, used Greta Thunberg as a human shield. We'll kill the little girl if you try to stop us from bullying you. You know, Schwarzenegger is a big tough man, but when it comes time, he grabs the closest little girl and says, "Oh, the pain," like Smitty in Lost in Space. So let's put aside the jump and holler about Greta. The problem isn't any specific member of the climate change crowd, except maybe Sean Strub, who was outside the Dakota to help sell this arrangement. The problem is that they postponed it. And who they postponed it with was this Flame Over Africa dude who was making covers with Yoko Ono and so forth. Now, what they did in reality was that they set the whole thing up to sell it as an ultimatum. That's what the nuclear threat comes in with. They're selling it as an ultimatum. You must accept it. You must go along with it. I consider it negligence. I think that the United States has sufficient manpower that we can apprehend the people behind these biolabs and set an example for the rest of the world who is harboring them to do the same through internal review processes. Putin has said he will go along with the war crime investigation. Instead of saying we won't until you do, let's just get started. Now, there are certain things that are involved in the trickery of the processes that they deployed. One of the things that makes it very slippery has to do with the way that the climate change movement refuses to address me. Paul McCartney and Yoko Ono have stood back and said, we're going to grapefruit this man, which means erase everything. Nobody ever says we should remove the Beatles' White Album from the shelves and erase everything that they did or it has no truth to it. My father's work at the University of Pittsburgh has made the pawnbrokers macabrely fascinated with pirating me. In fact, one of the ways they sold this was to make Licky Chop's spy cam videos. So what they said was he's having too much fun with this chick with the tattoo of death and the needle tracks to legitimately be actually investigating entrapment. So make him drink the Kool-Aid. Now, this is something that would normally bring lawyers dashing to the forefront, saying we demand that this school be held responsible. The reason they don't is that Amnesty International made a sneaky play. They said that any issue of violence, even in self defense or defense of his mother, any expression of anger, any raising of the fist, much less contact to a fat lip, must be seen as evidence that virginity proves rape. And Putin and Bush drew a line in the sand. If Kerry shakes his fist, it means he wanted to put in. You get the idea of how charming these castrators are. But you also get the idea that they work together. Gabbard was Gabriel and Bard. Bard was the girl at school who made up her mind while she was making love to me that she wanted me to shy off. And I did. And they said, the fact that you did proves you didn't. So virginity proves rape because you gave Jeff Weiner a fat lip. And enough said. And this girl was even introduced to me at a place called He's Dead Jim long before this agency, whose characteristic is to lie to your face, claiming that they're friendly when they're not, whose words about the AIDS attack was the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Long before they claim to have found the script that they actually wrote. And they're using the brilliant name Star Cynic. Ringo Starr and Greg Carl, Greg Star Cynic and Old Lace, right? That's what they're doing. They're lying through the teeth. They were behind the whole thing. It's a con job. It's that simple. And they want to grapefruit it because they don't want anybody to be made aware of it. They don't want to allow it in human history. They don't want it, the Smithsonian to make it public. They don't want KARA 7 or whatever the TV station is to mention it. They don't want to come community college to fire the people who poisoned me and made no secret of it. They don't want um, Biden's secret committee of hostility as a terror campaign from the governments to come to light. They don't want the fact that Bush and Putin worked this out through the Ouspensky Circle with the help of Oliver Stone recorded. They don't want the fact that this man was talking about a scheme to transform the human race by injecting the blood before AIDS started, and yet he was in charge of the AIDS mousetrap gang. They don't want it recorded that Seattle queers with Jay Inslee were actively party to it from a time before it happened, and that they played the climate change card at the appointed hour to push it through. They don't want it understood that these people are actively engaged in taking money from their own victims as a way of pulling teeth at the crematorium door. They made me cut the gold caps off my teeth in Des Moines, Iowa. That's a matter of record. This woman, Diamond Gullis, says it was because I fell in love with the Virgin, so I have to. So I was a gold digger, and I have to be punished. I have to drink the Kool-Aid. Well, the record shows I had no idea this girl was a virgin. This was from this agency that lied to your face. They claimed she claimed she loved me. So what's the problem? So, but they made it a problem because they're lying about everything. This woman's name, she was in Satanism in the 70s. Like Will Zell, she was in immunogenetics before AIDS started. And she stands outside the World Trade Center with a dagger. And yet, despite the fact that the anthrax is clearly her and her namesake calls me to ha me about John Lennon's Shakespearean role the day it happened, before AIDS started, despite all that, she gets consecrated as the leader of the Seattle Queers. And the Seattle Queers just take every souvenir to hell that they can grab and say, how dare you question this? You're crossing the UW dialectical PC line, drink the Kool-Aid. That's the whole gig with this Nazism, and that's what it is. And to doubt that is just foolishness. So what they're trying to do is make it a binary between Russia and choice in the Ukraine. And what are you trying to do? Lead us into nuclear catastrophe. And they ignited that thing in Lebanon because they've been threatening to blow up the mountain here. And Clarence Thomas of the Supreme Court is in on this gig. He was in on the Pussy Bowl word game that they used. The Midori used my appeal to Midori to help mastermind and stage play for Trumpy Tune. Trumpy Tune maybe has his own nuclear bomb, and what's it to him to blow up? Get revenge for the Axis. All around the world, people who are in the Axis go, see, look how slick Japan is. Yoko Ono did that in the name of peace. He got grapefruited. The Supreme Court is in on this. You want me to believe that they're not? They are. The obsequious Bush toady, Barack Obama was told all of this. He was like, how dare you sleep with a married Indian woman? She didn't even tell me she was married. What's it to you? And he's like, she's honorary the black man. And that means we get Midori and get to make pornographic undercover spy cams of you at the University of Pittsburgh. And if you dispute it, drink the Kool-Aid or we'll blow up the Magic Mountain. And they poison me in the mouth. I have a piece called The Mouth in the Mountain somewhere in my blog, I think, which describes them in the blog. There's evidence. Any rational university would say, put a stop to this, but not UW Dialectical, not Jay Inslee, not the University of Pittsburgh. They call it the nature of reality and do like this when the Fern Hollow Bridge collapses. And then they say, well, maybe you'd like it if we seriously Kennedy Greta Thunberg, and they jump in to every email that I send with cyber innuendos, and that's how holocaustly ridiculous the Ouspensky Circle really is, because that's who it is. It's Robert Fripp of King Crimson and Penis Gabriel and Vladimir Putin and Joey Biden, who all put their heads together with Oliver Stone and said, look, We proved with Gail Burstyn and the AIDS attack that this Amy Global's meal ticket about the Holocaust of the Jews really pays when we get revenge for the ancestors, man. And we'll pour out a mountain of Cambodian swastikas and call them tributes to the ancestors, man. And this is what goes on at the University of Pittsburgh and UW Dialecto. Anybody can see it from the evidence. I'm not making a word of it up. So when you look at the situation that's going on in the Ukraine, you have to say both yes and no to seeing both sides. No, we're not seeing both sides, but we're also not seeing what's really in play, which is the Ouspensky circles leapfrog. And you think, oh, well, the oligarchs are being taken from their yachts are being repoed and stuff. Well, these are men of mysterious mystics. They can walk away from their yachts. Robert Fripp, one of their leaders, says, "Let the power fall." What's it to him? He's playing Story of the Berg. He's the Jim Jones. He's going to whistle away into the John Lennon Emerald Beyond. He's in his 70s or 80s, and he's been planning his whole life to whistle away into the John Lennon Emerald Beyond. So it's nothing to him. He doesn't want his yacht. He wants you to think he wants his yacht while he whistles away into the John Lennon Emerald Beyond. That's what the Ouspensky Circle really is. That's why you have Putin as an altar boy at the Russian Orthodox Church. Give me a break, okay? Fuck you and your fucking Kool-Aid. These people are sick in the mind. We have a Jim Jones situation that has developed in the city of Seattle. That's what it is. They have lookalikes of a gang that apparently held a mall shooting in the bank. I mean, Yoko Ono has gone over the top, and the fucking Kremlin that exists in New York City, they dare to act out, watch your step in the name of Colombia. I'm from Pittsburgh. What the hell do you think? Who did Spike Lee think he is? Spike Lee can get a married Indian girl at the snap of fingers, and I doubt he would check her passport or give two F's whether or not she said she didn't like her husband. This woman didn't even identify that she was married. She said she had a roommate at school. I assumed it was another woman. What are you supposed to? And you're telling me that Columbia can outthink a doofus from Pittsburgh? Well, suppose you should be able to outthink, but you can't even think. You should, you should be able to outthink a doofus from Pittsburgh, but you should at least be able to outthink on the basis of thought. And you're so busy outthinking that you don't even think. So I mean, Spike Lee isn't going to rescue anybody. There are things that have to be done, and I'm not suggesting that we should blow up the world over any of this. But the idea that the black man is going to make you drink the Kool-Aid is on its face exactly what it sounds like. There's a Jim Jones situation that's developed here in Colombia. It's just screwball because they all invest in it, because they all have proven themselves so much BS. I mean, it's bullbat caca that comes out of their stuff. But they can corner you on the street, man, so they know the nature of reality. They win the UW Dialectical. They tug of war over the umbrella. The line in the sand, you put it in because Spike Lee imagined that you did. And if Spike Lee imagined that you did, it's because the ancestors have revealed that you did to Spike Lee. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's what's really going on, by the way. What I just said, if you didn't get it the first time, just replay this. That's what's really going on.